The economy that Biden inherited was god-awful. Many people were suffering under an economic collapse that was just kind of looming. We had a pretty serious recession on par with that of the 2008 economic crisis, and Biden was given a pretty serious mess to clean up. So how has Biden handled it? Well, recently, Biden did a speaking engagement in which he apparently did a really good job of explaining in detail how he has improved the economy, not just pointing to where the economy has improved, but explaining exactly what he did to improve it, and then goes on to explain what he plans to do in the future to continue this era of unprecedented economic growth, which has literally been record-breaking. We are experiencing record-breaking, sustained economic growth under Biden. The right will never allow you to believe this. They will continue to convince you that we are failing and inflation is going to destroy the country and it's going to collapse. But in reality, we are seeing unprecedented economic growth. And let's hear about it.
Face a stark choice. Behind curtain number one, America's most notorious snake oil salesman. From the moment he descended the escalator at Trump Tower in 2015, Donald Trump sold himself to the American people, and especially his base, as a successful businessman who would hire, quote, only the best people. Not only did that carefully crafted image of Trump as some sort of business mogul collapse like a house of cards in the wake of Attorney General Tish James's uncovering of years of widespread financial fraud, but Trump has become the first president since Herbert Hoover to leave office with fewer jobs in this country than when he entered office. Not to mention many of his people, those so-called best people that Trump brought on, think that Donald Trump should never, ever, ever get close to the White House again. Now, behind curtain number two, a serious public...
Literally one term, and he caused a fucking plague that resulted in, certainly for America, but all around the world, a massive economic crash. Yeah, if you are a reasonable person who's no longer drinking the Trump Kool-Aid or forced to, like, toe the line because you work for him, you absolutely don't think he should be anywhere near the White House again because you knew him personally, know how temperamental he is, and what a horrible leader he is for this country. Not even just ideologically, but, like, pragmatically. He doesn't know how to run the country well. If he is back in power, he may cause many more millions of Americans to die of another plague or more COVID. I don't know what it'll be. Like, he might have COVID spreading rallies or something.
Public servants surrounded by other serious public servants and officials and experts who together bring decades and decades of experience to the table in managing what is, by practically every metric, an economy that is roaring. News today that the U.S. added 303,000 jobs. That's well ahead of expectations. And that the unemployment rate fell to 3.8%. That's nearly as low as it has been in half a century. It's yet another data point in what is a remarkable string of economic successes and wins. Even inflation, which soared in the wake of the COVID pandemic, is down from its 2022 highs. Because he is incapable.
So inflation never goes away, so to say, like the inflated value never drops. That is to say, the inflation of the dollar never goes away. But what causes it, the inflation rate, can go away, and this results in the effect of, oh, things are back to normal. Prices have pretty much stabilized. Because inflation is just caused by there not being enough supply to meet a demand. And once that supply is able to level out for that demand, or the demand levels out to the supply, the things just kind of tend to work themselves out. Obviously, prices don't tend to change. What we have seen is wages go up. Wages have increased under Biden. Worked hours have gone up. Jobs have gone up. So people are able to afford things much more again.
Of facing facts, especially in this area. Trump has been spinning a version of the economy over on Earth 2 that he calls a cesspool. He said that at a rally last month. But as CNBC points out, quote, the numbers paint a different picture, one more in line with Biden's narrative of economic dominance, American economic dominance, than Trump's apocalyptic warnings.
Well, this is the same strategy that the Republicans used for the border funding bill. The Republicans' biggest wedge issue is the narrative that there are billions of illegals flooding into the country with pitchforks and torches like Uruk-hai in Lord of the Rings, coming in to pillage and rape our towns and villages. But that's not the reality of it, of course. But regardless, the Democrats and Biden called the Republicans' bluff and offered the biggest funding bill for border security in American history, and the Republicans unanimously voted against it. And all of them gave their reasons. For some reason, they decided to admit why they did it, being they can't, quote-unquote, solve this problem while Biden is in office because they can't allow him to take credit for solving the immigration problem. That needs to be for Trump to solve. If you think I'm lying, you can look at Mitt Romney and other Republicans saying exactly this and criticizing House Republicans for this because they recognize that, like, you know, they're just trying to worship Trump and keep a wedge issue there for Trump to, quote-unquote, solve or try to solve or say he's going to solve. It's like
presidential
magic.
Campaign touting the great jobs numbers today said this, quote, President Biden inherited the worst economy since the Great Depression from Donald Trump because Trump only cared about one job, his own. Even the folks over at Fox Business had to admit economy's in pretty good shape.
Because there's no data you can point to that says the economy is doing poorly. I remember at one point Fox was desperately coping where, like, the economy naturally, I mean, look at any graph of growth and there's always like a where it's like a general trend upwards, but there's always very brief spikes down. That's just like how that works. That's how a general, like, growth works. There's usually not just a steady upward growth in any chart for any economic thing ever, stocks or the Dow Jones or NASDAQ, S&P 500, spider puts, like anything that you can imagine as far as like economic growth. These are index funds, by the way, if you're wondering, like the Dow Jones, NASDAQ, S&P 500 futures. These are all index funds. They're basically just collections of a bunch of the biggest, most economy defining and driving companies. And you're basically, when you buy, say, let's say you buy like a share of the S&P 500. That's what my money's in, by the way. You're buying a piece of a shitload of companies. They're very low risk, high reward, or not low risk, low reward investments, and they generally grow in the they're pretty good representations of the economy. There's not really any numbers you can point to where the economy is dropping. They tried to cope and say that, like, there would be like a drop, like a 1 week low in the midst of an 8-month high for the economy, and they would say, look how Biden is failing. But, you know, I mean, we continue to see, like, every week I'm coming on to say, hey, by the way, we continue to have record-breaking economic growth. It's not stopping or slowing. Biden continues to do a great job.
At the end of the day, as you know, we started off discussing, the economy is doing better than everybody expected. We were all thinking there was a recession late last year, 12 months ago, and then you got 3% GDP growth. And right now it looks like that's going to continue for a while.
Mind you, Biden also just canceled a shitload of student debt as well. Like hundreds of millions of dollars of student debt he recently canceled.
So where we start today with some of our favorite reporters and friends. With me here at the table, NBC News senior business correspondent Christine Romans, plus host of the On Brand podcast, Donnie Deutsch is here, and the host of Politics Nation here on MSNBC, and president of the National Action Network, the Reverend Al Sharpton's here. It's so nice to have you here, and we've interconnected and sort of known each other through very different roles. And I admitted to you in the makeup room that when I worked in Republican politics, I had the job of spinning a not good economy at this sort of very moment in a political calendar in the context of a presidential campaign. And I want to understand from you, first, the facts, and two, the difference between what people think.
I like how she's like, so back when I was a Republican grifter, I had to find a way to spin a bad economy under, I don't know, Bush into being something good to a Republican audience. Like, he's actually doing a good job despite all the red on this screen.
Think of Biden's economy and what the facts really say.
So first, I mean, in any era, a report like this would be received in any office, the White House, as we got an A report card today. This is a great number in any era. 303,000 net new jobs added in 1 month would be good. 3.8% unemployment. That is a good number, and broad-based job gains. But there's something interesting happening here where there's two parallel tracks. One that is the story of a strong economy, resilient, and actually getting better by the day, by the week, accelerating job creation in the beginning part of this year. And the other side where people say they don't feel it. And I think the big reason there is that inflation story. Inflation scars run pretty deep. And the White House today did push out, the Council of Economic Advisors, a chart.
People think that when the inflation rate goes down and like that stops being a problem, like there's no more continued inflation, they think that means things go back to being worth as much as they used to be. That's not how it works. Companies set the prices, and very rarely do they decide to set prices lower than they were previously established. The only time that usually happens, the reverse of the inflation of the US dollar, is when the supply rapidly outpaces the demand. We saw this happen big time during COVID with gas. Do you remember when like gas was selling for like pennies a gallon or whatever, and people were just like getting empty gallons of water and buckets and taking them to the gas stations to fill them up to like hoard up on cheap gas? We've seen massively expensive gas prices prior to that, and we're obviously seeing them after that fact too, despite them somewhat stabilizing now. The only scenario in which they will really drop gas prices is if the demand for gas substantially plummets, meaning if people just stop driving as much and start riding bikes and walking, then you'll see gas prices drop. That's for damn sure. Because if people aren't buying as much gas and these companies don't want to have to fucking waste it, they're gonna drop the prices to pitiful amounts if they have to sell it for anything. Like they're gonna want to sell it. The gas isn't worth much to begin with, even processed. They really do overprice it for what it's worth, and they will drop that price down to practically nothing in dire situations of low demand and high supply. I got 79 cents per gallon somewhere when COVID hit. Yeah, it got even cheaper than that in Florida. I was in Florida when that happened, and I think it got down to like 50 or 40 cents a gallon or something for gas. It was crazy.
I think that really sort of shows the story.
I remember we were driving by the gas stations, and they were just lines of people just filling up on gas because it's weird because like there's so many people buying gas, but it's because there's such low demand. And it's because overall, most people are not driving right now, but the people who are driving are benefiting from extremely low gas prices because they are that very small demand in a very high supply economy.
Inflation prices.
Why do I have to explain supply-demand economics right now? Like, are Republicans really this lacking an understanding of how this works?
We're rising faster than wages for a long time, for a year or two. You can see it there. And only recently have wages been rising faster than inflation. And it might take more time for people to start to really feel that change, that switch there.
Wages are growing, but inflation is going to take a while. Like, it takes a bit, Like, what is this, 2023? And now we're in March 2024. We'll have some time, for sure, by the end of the year to see expanded recovery for Biden's economic policy. I am so fucking excited to see what Biden can do with this country with another 4 years.